In three, two, one. Billy and Colin work for the other side, but who's good, guys? In the end, it's Wahlberg who decides. And welcome to episode 7, where Jeff Reynolds and I, Kristen Ashton, are going to be talking about The Departed, a 2006 Martin Scorsese film that Jeff is one of, if not the best film, your favorite film.
Yeah, it's too good. And also, I feel like I'm going to slip into a Boston crime lord accent throughout this entire interview. The Departed.
Right? I've been telling everyone we're going to be doing this Sunday, and I haven't used the R. You'd be very proud.
I mean, yeah, this film, Kristen, is so good. I mean, I'm already a fan of Martin Scorsese. Are you a fan?
Yes, but it's hard to describe, right? Because his films are so different. And it's not like Tarantino different. They kind of follow what films normally do, but the camera shots and the wackiness of these relatively serious stories he tells are come together somehow into this beautiful mess that you can't not want to see more of.
Yeah, it's the definition of unable to avert your eyes from a train wreck, right? I mean, this entire film is a train wreck that's paying off until the very last second, and then out of the blue, an airplane comes crashing in and smashes into both planes anyway.
Dude, that's what it felt like the first time I saw this. That ending, I was like, oh man, Leo's gonna make it. Leo's gonna, oh my, so is the rat gonna even get his comeuppance? There were no words to describe how I felt about the ending the first time I saw it.
Yeah, it's very, very entertaining, I think.
All right, so let's do the rundown before we get into the discussion. So Leonardo DiCaprio plays Billy Costigan, whose family was a bad family in the Boston area, but he trains to become a cop, and he gets invited to go undercover to work for the Boston area's biggest gangster, Frank Costello, who has been training this other kid named Colin Sullivan from childhood to grow up and enter the police and become a rat for Frank, working in the police. So this entire film is about these two guys trying to find out who one another is while leaking information to the other side. And of course, the end is the big culmination of discovery, who finds out who, and who is the ultimate victor of this cat and mouse, really intense game.
Yeah, intense is perfect. I mean, on the show, we've talked about a lot of intense movies, and I think this is up there amongst some of the most intense. I mean, there are times, I mean, who do you, I have written down here, who do you actually root for in this movie? Are you rooting for Leo? Are you rooting for Matt Damon? Are you rooting for the cops or the bad guys? I actually find myself pulling for the bad guys. I don't know why. Maybe because Leonardo DiCaprio's character is one of the bad guys, like he's playing undercover bad guy, and I don't know. I find myself rooting for them.
Well, let's not lie here. You're a Slytherin at heart, right? You're a Slytherin 100%. But also, I mean, it's kind of cheating, right? Because Jack Nicholson's on the side of the bad guys. And his performance in this film, his performance in every film, it's just second to none. He's hilarious. And I don't know if he's just acting like himself or he's actually putting on a character.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. He is just fantastically horrible. Like, he is so sleazy, but I think I feel that Matt Damon's character and Matt Damon's role, and I'm not a huge fan of Matt Damon in a lot of things, but in this, he's one that you love to hate. Like, he's just so slimy and gross, and just, he's manipulating the system, he's manipulating the cops and everything, and he's doing it, and it just happens to up until the end, everything falls in place for him. And maybe that's why I don't like that side of the story as much, only because nothing goes right for Leonardo DiCaprio and that whole portion of it, but everything goes right for Matt Damon.
Right? And it's so hard. I totally agree. Of all of the bad guys, he's the one I don't want to win. Because
Yes.
why is that, right? Because DiCaprio has to work so hard to even get where he is, to prove, to kind of like make it right for his family. And Jack Nicholson is just so above the law that he gets to be wacky and have fun with being as brutal and masochistic. And then Mr. French is this awesome, silent, I trust you, you trust me guy on the side. But then you have this Matt Damon character who's had everything handed to him on a silver platter. And he manages to pull it off, technically, until Frank goes down.
Yeah, it's like that's a perfect way of saying it. For Leo, he's got to work for everything and literally do anything and everything to make it happen. And Matt Damon's been raised, to just step right into this role without doing any of the work required. I don't know. I pull for Leo in that case.
Totally. Now, do you think what Matt Damon did? Well, Colin. I'll call him Colin because are they the people doing these things, the actors doing these things, or the characters? So Matt Damon's character Colin, 100%. I think he would have gotten away with it if he hadn't have killed Frank. But he found out that Frank was an FBI informant. So do you think it was right what he did, or do you think it was just an emotional, oh my God, I can't trust anybody anymore kind of a thing?
I love the fact that Frank turns out to be an FBI informant because I mean, again, I am no crime historian and like all this stuff. I just know what I know from films. So as a movie watcher, I feel like Frank being an FBI informant adds validity to the story because he is willing to do whatever it takes to keep this train rolling, right? And he's like, of course I'm an FBI informant. I give them the information that they need, they stay off my back, and that gets rolling. I imagine that if you were to have a real crime syndicate, you would have to do things like that to make your life continue.
Right, because if you're the FBI informant in Boston, you would need to make sure no one infringes on your area so that you're the one who makes the deal with the Taiwanese group?
Yeah,
The
I
Chinese?
think I think it's Chinese, but
With the
for sure.
microchips.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that. I think that, and what Matt Damon's character ends up figuring out is that the game has been played not only by him, but to him. And I think he doesn't like that. He doesn't like the fact that he didn't know what was going on. And then he snaps, right? Because you see him and he lives this like, white collar, perfect life the entire film. And then when this happens, he thinks he can take over for what's going on. Maybe he thinks he can do it better. Maybe he thinks he's just betrayed. Whatever it is, he can't handle it.
I like that idea, right? Because we see Colin as a kid, and clearly Colin comes from a very tough family. And so Frank takes this kid under his wing and basically raises him to do this one job. And yeah, I like that idea that he feels betrayal by the end of it. And why don't you think Frank would tell Colin about this? Do you think Frank's just so good and dedicated to the FBI role? He knows that he can't even trust this kid he raised?
I think that he doesn't tell anyone because they wouldn't understand the business of it. So, I mean, they would see, like, imagine if, like, the Citizens guy found out that Frank was an FBI informant, right? He doesn't have the IQ to measure, oh, that was a good business decision for our crime business. I think that he doesn't tell anyone because of that reason. And clearly, even the most stable and probably the most understanding person on his team finds out that he's an FBI informant, and then we all know how that goes.
it goes so well for everybody involved. Now, this is something too that threw me for a loop, right? Because at the start of the film, it's clearly a cat and mouse game. Are the two main leads, Colin and Billy, going to find out about one another? And how are they going to take each other down? But what really kind of stuck out was when Billy's talking to the guy who leaks that Frank's the FBI informant. And suddenly you can't trust anybody. Is Martin Sheen an FBI informant? Mark Wahlberg disappears after the first half of the film and we don't know where he's gone to. Who can you trust? And I think that is a stroke of genius because it's a movie about who can you trust.
Absolutely. And I think the cinematography plays into that so hard. Like, I think the angles that things are shot in, it feels just a little bit uncomfortable the entire movie. You feel like some of this is, man, Martin Scorsese does an amazing job. Let's take the first scene, for example, with Frank in the grocery store where he's giving the comic book and giving the groceries for his mom there, right? Well, they angled it so that they didn't have to do any sort of CGI to make his character look younger, because obviously that would have, ruined it for a lot of people. So the way that they shoot it at this weird angle, and he's sort of in a shadow, but you can still see him, and it kind of feels like a dream state and also a flashback, kinda, but it also feels real. You don't have that cheesy, cliche flashback feeling. That is one of the scenes that stands out in my mind as this guy knows what he wants from this scene, Martin Scorsese. Also, these characters, the writing is great in that scene. It sets these characters up so well.
Right, the humor and the not debauchery, but the ludity of when Frank asks the teenage daughter if she started her period yet really immediately sets up who this Frank guy is. He's a hound, but maybe he's doing that to threaten the store owner to stay on his side more so than just being a hound, right? And then you got these weird comedic shots where when he gives the kid the change, there's a camera cut in there. He drops the change in the kid's hand, and then it's a different scene when the hand pulls away. It's a slight little shift, and it's hilarious, but the energy, it just feels real good.
It feels real good. And I think that when I say that it sets his character up, after he makes that comment to the shop owner's daughter, I think you're just supposed to imagine it's the shop owner's daughter in there. I don't think they actually say that.
That's right.
But she looks extremely upset and uncomfortable about what's happening. But 10 seconds later, because of this character, because of who this guy is in society, she's smiling, and like he winks at her or something like that, and she like smiles all flirty and weird to him, and you're just like, this guy is one manipulative just crime lord, and you get that in the first scene.
Mm-hmm. And this is the guy, too, that's basically going to carry the entire film. So, like you said, we got to set it up hard. We got to set it up fast. And it is just boom, boom, boom. There's a lot of color. There's a lot of light. There's a lot of noise, except for the shadow on his face. And Scorsese just, boom, lays it out flat. And then we're at a car dealership later when Colin, it's shown to us that Colin basically is being adopted into this crime family. And then we see the growth. But we don't see Leo's character, Billy, until he's an adult, already in school. And that's when we first see that back and forth between the two characters.
Yeah, do you feel like we need to see that? Do you feel like that's something that we missed in the film? Because I didn't feel that when I watched it before I was like watching it, but I was thinking the same thought that you had, and I thought, do we need to see that? I guess we don't, because we all enjoyed the movie without thinking about that. Like, we all enjoyed it and we believed it, and you do see his, I believe it's his cousin or his friend, that he stays at his house right before, like right as he's trying to get back into crime. And man, talk about manipulation as well. I mean, they know that he's going to go back into dealing drugs and doing this stuff, and then somebody's going to find him because of his last name. I mean, the cops know what's up here too. But do we need to see his past, Kristen? Do you think that that's missing?
No, I mean, like you said, I didn't feel it was missing after the first watch. But it's funny that it even comes up as a question, because normally I would imagine in a less artsy way of telling the story, you do the back and forth between the two characters from the beginning to set up that they're, I guess they're equals, and we're watching their two lives progress and seeing how they run into one another. So it kind of sets up this weird, Billy is actually a secondary character to these two mains that we're going to be watching, which is very, very interesting, because Billy's the one who had to fight to get out of a bad situation, only to get thrown right back into that situation.
Yeah. And, you know, now that we're thinking about it, I know one of the things that I learned in college about stuff like this is that flashbacks, this is going to ruin a lot of things for people, because it's ruined things for me when I watch films. Flashbacks are considered by the elite to be lazy storytelling. So it's lazy storytelling to have these flashbacks. And the reason that it is considered to be lazy storytelling is because it is harder for characters to portray what happened in the past accurately, honestly, and well than it is to just be like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to go and show you what happened, because it's easier to just do that, you know? So how does Billy Costigan react to his past is adding a different layer on top of it, rather than if we just saw him living in the past, we're like, oh, this guy's a crime lord. But really, we're thrown into it with, he's trying to be a statey. He's trying to be good. He's working really hard. These cops in the office are giving him one hell of a time about it, and it's affecting him in a weird way. And we're seeing it unfold like that. So it becomes it's deeper than if we just saw a flashback of that happen.
That's a wonderful point, right? And it has to go with the whole setup of the story, because by doing foreshadowing, in a sense, like you said, you play to that not needing to go back for a flashback, because you already put, what was it, Chekhov's gun on the mantle. It's there. We get it. We've accepted it as part of the story. Now we can move forward. And if it's referenced again, of course his cousin was into selling drugs. Of course he can get back into the crime scene. And Frank, we already know, basically owns the town with that initial scene. As we can assume from this one little shop, Frank owns the town. And from there, of course, if you're dealing drugs in Boston, you're gonna run into Frank. And I love when Billy is starting to get into it, and he's in the bar and he orders cranberry juice, and the guy makes fun of him, and Martin Scorsese really definitely took the time to show Billy thinking about it and going, I gotta do this. I gotta do this. And then just smashing the glass on the guy's head. So fantastic, because then you see that Billy, he's smart. We know he's smart, and they've set up he's a scholastic person. And now he needs to be the physical manifestation of those smarts, and he understands what it's going to take.
Yeah. And like, as you're saying all of this, I'm realizing, you know, another thing that is really interesting about films, and for the most part, when you look at films, the most interesting types of things to watch are when you are watching, when a director is giving you the actor's reaction, and off camera is the actor that's speaking. So not only that, but it requires a serious level of performance from the actors in the film. So in a film like this, like you're talking about, when Leo is sitting at the bar, someone is talking to him and the camera is not on them. It's on what Leo is, how Leo is reacting to what's going on in this scene, right? How his character is reacting to what's going on in this scene. So when that, you can see the thought process going through his head about what's going to happen, and he's really conflicted, and then he decides to beat the crap out of this guy. You know, some of the best media out there is like that, where you're watching reactions and not actions.
Right. So how do you think this adds to the storytelling? Because I like it in that we never question who the main characters are, and we're never given superfluous side characters. I mean, we enjoy the two gangsters that are outside of Frank's restaurant later on in the film. You see, she's ignoring me. That's a cop.
Yeah.
You're ignoring me? That's a cop. Those two guys. That's hilarious. But we never once questioned their importance to the story because they don't really get those setups, those reaction shots.
Yeah, it's very true, because the reaction shot there when Billy walks out and they call him a cop, I mean, that is brilliant writing right there, I think, because they're doing this stupid joke. The whole time you're just like, this joke is dumb. It's not really a part of the story. And then the payoff comes and you're like, oh, that was really well done. Like that, because his reaction to them calling him a cop, him freaking out, you get suspense because you think, is he going to run? Is he going to do something crazy here? Because he thinks, they think, you know, it's just a big, it's great.
Yeah, they're looking for the rat at that point. And isn't that the part where the guy who got shot is dying on the couch and asks, I gave you the wrong address. How'd you know which one to show up to? So he's already spooked.
Yeah, and he's like, I didn't tell anybody. Like, why? Ask me why. And then he dies. I mean, it's real good.
Mm-hmm. Now, this ties into the camera work again, like we were talking about before. And you have this quote here. Did you want to take it, or did you want me to take it?
Oh, take it away.
All right, it's from TMN. What does TMN stand for, real?
TMN is the movie network. It's like a cool place you can go where people give reviews on films. And I thought this quote was really intuitive. I think it's perfect for this film.
Fantastic. So the movie network has the Boston streets come alive with Scorsese's camera work. Innovative angles and shots make each scene as engaging and often as disturbing as possible. It's impossible not to get sucked into the world of this gritty film, and in spite of its length, the movie is over before you know it.
Yeah, let's talk about the scene where Frank has the hand, right? He's coming out like it looks as though, and as the viewer we don't know, but it looks as though he has just butchered somebody, right? And he walks out and he's got this hand, and he takes the ring off of the hand and sticks the bloody hand in a plastic bag, all the while having a conversation with Billy in this apartment, right? And I believe his wife is there too, and she's got zero F's to give about what's going on. She's just like, whatever, smoking a cigarette in the corner, you know, all this stuff. It is that is so disturbing but engaging and gritty. That's why I like this quote, because there's a lot of scenes that are like that.
Oh, extremely dark, but the comedy is on point. I mean, Jack Nicholson, he's at breakfast. He's in his morning robe. He just talked with his basically adopted son, who's chilling with Matt Damon, basically, and this hand. And then Mr. French is chilling in the corner. And it's this really, I like this scene because it feels like they're further testing Billy. Will Billy care about the hand? Can he be trusted to actually do the dirty work? Because if he can't look at a hand, what else can he look at, kind of a thing. So I feel like this is one of those information gathering scenes, even though we don't specifically know what information the bad guys are trying to get on Billy.
Yeah. And I mean, I got a question for you, Kristen, because I don't know how I feel about this. So in movies like this, I think every performance is spot on. Like, every single performance is great. I mean, Alec Baldwin is great. Everybody is great. Does it take a bunch of... I mean, how do you think these actors are working off of each other in the respect of... if a whole bunch of okay actors get into a room together and they start acting and they realize, oh wow, we're all pretty good, does that inspire a feeling of, we've all got to be better, we all have to be the best that we can be? Or in comparison to a film that has one star leading actor in it, do they feel like they need to pull the rest of the cast up, and does that hinder the performance of the film? Or is this movie just a whole bunch of kick-ass actors and they're just doing a bang-up job?
Oh, wow, what a question, right? I'm going to start by saying I think a lot of how that's perceived is based on personality, right? Because there are some actors that when they're faced with talent above them, they work really hard, They got some big shoes to fill next to Jack Nicholson. I'm just Leonardo DiCaprio. This is Jack Nicholson. What am I going to do here, kind of a thing. And I think the beauty of this film, not only with the script and the story that's told, because that's all great, so it really works to their strengths, but it feels like Scorsese and the casting directors got together a group of people that have fun, and they enjoy the process of filmmaking, but they're not so serious that everything has to be perfect, right? Because you told me to watch for a scene and the bad guys are checking for a rat, and it's DiCaprio and Mr. French sitting there at a table because Jack Nicholson has left the scene, which was as scripted. But you can totally see it because not a few seconds later, Nicholson turns around and kind of right past the camera to where Mr. French is. And DiCaprio is just scared out of his little mind when Nicholson shows up again. And it was such an improv but fun scene. It was, like you said, kept for the final cut there.
Yeah, and it's brilliant. I mean, if you want a lesson in staying in character, I mean, I think it is clear that they had said, the scene is over, but they hadn't said cut yet. So Leo stays in character there even throughout when the scene is over, and they captured this moment of his reaction to what the action is, and it's just great. I mean, I think I agree with you. It depends on the actors, I'm sure. But in this film, the casting is incredible because of that dark humor piece of all of this, where you've got the Alec Baldwin, you've got the Mark Wahlbergs, you got everybody in this movie that is adding this level of humor to this story that is so messed up, but it makes it watchable, it makes it enjoyable, entertaining. It's very well done in the casting department.
Totally. And it makes me wonder, too, how much of it was improv by the actors themselves, because I feel like every actor there just improv some stuff to see what would happen and where it would go. And Scorsese, as a director, was good enough to recognize the improv potential of these actors and their reaction to these improv lines, that it could totally work and feel like it was a part of the script rather than feel like a written joke that had to be forced in there.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly, I mean, that's good direction, good performances, great writing. It's all great.
Totally. Now, with going back to the humor, so how do you think it works, right? Because this is a dark story, like we've been talking about, and it's got a very dark ending, but it doesn't feel depressing. I didn't feel sad or emotionally spent. In fact, at the end of the film, with that final shot of the rat that they hired, and they put a little food on the railing for the rat to come over and eat and just stand there for a little bit, had me laughing. So how do you feel the humor was pulled off? Like, how did they do it?
Well, they set you up right from the very beginning, right? And they take these stereotypes of relationships with police officers, and the stereotype about how it's vulgar and all this stuff, and they hit you right off the bat, right when they're given that one meeting about all of their informants that are inside, and Wahlberg and Alec Baldwin are having that conversation about his mother from last night. I mean, and it's fast, it's quippy, it's fast, it's great. And so you think, oh, this is going to be that kind of movie, and then they're just taking the piss out of each other the entire film, and it's it's funny because you're uncomfortable. I mean, it's an incredible feat to imagine could ever be completed, but it's great in this movie.
Right, and I think it plays into this whole idea where if you have extreme situations, everything else around it has to be extreme as well. So the humor is very vulgar at times, and the language is pretty extreme, but it never feels out of place. And like you said, they're taking the piss out of each other. Why not just insults flying left and right, like after Matt Damon loses the football game to the firefighters.
Yeah, it's great.
It was like, all right, this is his character and this is how it's gonna go. And have you ever lived in Boston? Is listeners, is this what Boston is like? How accurate to Boston life was this?
I've been to Boston a couple of times. I have some friends that live there, and this is definitely, I would say, a stereotype compounded into this thing. But just like you would imagine, there are these rivalries, you know, firefighters, police officers, softball games, this kind of stuff, you know, all of that is just built upon to make it this, you know, it's a film, so it's not a documentary. So, but I think they do a really great job with making it super entertaining.
All right, and here's a question I have for you in regards to the Billy Colin face-off. Who do you think had the harder job? Who do you think was challenged the most?
I definitely think that poor Billy Costigan was challenged way more. But I also think that, well, I think it also plays into the relationship that builds between, you know, well, what's her name in the movie? I just completely forgot.
Madeline.
But there's a whole love triangle that happens in this movie as well. And I think that Billy wins in that realm because that's where he can be more real, where Matt Damon's character ultimately loses that love triangle battle. And that's just another level of uncomfortableness that's added to the film.
Right? Because she's about to move in with Colin when she sleeps with Billy. And I wasn't surprised that it happened. I kind of figured it would, especially when they kind of hint at Colin being impotent after the first night Madeline spends with him, which I thought was a very interesting thing. And I think even in the IMDb trivia, that was something Matt Damon suggested to kind of be an opposite of Frank. And in that case, that makes a lot of sense. That kind of makes sense, right? Because Frank has given Colin a lot of this power, but at the same time, I guess, neutered him a bit in a sense, right? Because we see Colin trying to give orders later on to keep Frank safe, and Frank refuses to listen. Just outright, I don't care what it takes. You stop this.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. That is an amazing thought. I mean, what a great point. I think that the fact that he can't perform for his girlfriend that's moving in, I mean, it shows that he thinks he's in control, but Frank is actually in control. I mean, that is such a cool way of looking at it.
Right, and in the end, we know she's pregnant. Now, who do you think the baby belongs to?
Oh, I don't.
Because honestly, I want to believe it's Billy's.
We need to get Maury Povich in here to tell us who the baby belongs to. Get past the envelope. I think it's Billy's. If I was a betting man, I would say Billy.
Mm-hmm. And do you think she keeps the baby at the end of the film? Because we know she just brushes right past Colin. She's done with them. Not even going to give him a look. Do you think she keeps the baby?
Yeah, I do. I do think. I don't know. I mean, she's. This is stuff I didn't think about. She's a doctor, right? And she is, thinking about all things and relationships and all that kind of stuff. So I think because of that, I would say that she keeps the baby, that it all happens the way, and then maybe we'll have The Departed 2, and the baby will become an FBI informant, and then
the child grows up, walks in his father's footsteps, kind of a thing. There we go. Absolutely. It's perfect. Okay, and then going off the whole talk of questioning reality thing that we brushed on earlier, with when you find out Frank's the FBI and oh my God, who can you trust kind of a thing. How deep do you think you have to go before everything becomes a conspiracy? I guess how many rats do you have to run across before everybody becomes a rat?
I mean, really, though, when you wrote this down here, I was reading through the notes. I was like, this is a really good point. It's kind of got that whole Inception feel to it, where how do you really know what is reality and what is. I mean, there's that popular saying, when you lie so much, you start forgetting what the truth really is, and you start convincing yourself that these lies are true. And I think there's a whole lot of that going on here. And then it's clear that when the curtain is pulled on someone, showing them that they were lying, even if it is Frank, it destroys someone's world because that lie is so embedded in this, fake persona that this person has created. I think you don't have to go very deep before everybody starts looking out for themselves. I mean, that's human nature, right?
Right, and I also want to give props to Scorsese because everyone who was a rat was a rat. There, Frank was a bad guy, even though he was an informant. But it wasn't that he was a good guy pretending to be a bad guy who was actually a good guy. It only ever went that one level. Bad guy pretending to be good guy pretending to be bad guy. And that's really so everything kind of felt believable. And then at the end, when Leo won't let the rat go, why do you think? Because Billy wants out. He says he just wants out. But then he sees the envelope and he can't.
Yeah, there's a morality crisis there, right? I mean, this guy's been living years, I believe years past, that he's been, pretending to be somebody that he's not. But then the morality of all of it kicks in at the end there, and it gets to him. And I actually like that because I think that feels like our hero moment, right? Where the hero is challenged with one final challenge. Do they accept it? And I feel as if it would have been crappier if he didn't and then went and died some other way or did something else, maybe, rode off into the sunset. That would have felt worse to me than him actually becoming what you want him to be at the end of the movie.
Yeah, right. And Colin wasn't gonna delete his information. He's gonna give this guy who he knows was working as the mole inside of Frank's operation, it's just gonna give him his check and let him go. And this makes me question, jumping back to Billy, do you like the fact that Billy found the envelope first rather than getting mailed all of the tapes that Frank made? Or would you have liked to have seen him getting the tapes first and then or do you like the fact that Billy is the one who put it together ultimately?
I love the way that they set up him finding the envelope because it gives you that interaction with the two of them. And it gives you, because we've been talking about reaction shots. It gives you that reaction shot of him in the police department. All of this is happening. He thinks it's over. Where do you even start to perform that thought? I mean, that is brilliant, right? And you can see it on his face, exactly what he's feeling and exactly what's going to happen. So I like the way that it played out. What do you think?
I liked it too. I liked how tired Billy made me feel watching him. I just wanted this kid to go home. I just wanted him to, maybe it would work out with the psychologist. Maybe things could have had a happily ever after, but it didn't. And do you ultimately like the fact that Billy died? Do you think that death had to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's morbid in a way, but I think that the movie itself is saying what you just said earlier, Kristen, is that everyone is a rat in this movie. Everyone, whether and also it's saying, good and evil is in the eye of the beholder, right? Because the cops think they're doing the good thing, the bad guys think they're doing the thing that needs to be done, and they're doing whatever it takes. What the good guys, quote unquote, do in the movie is morally gray. What the bad guys are doing is morally gray. I mean, there are times where Frank is at, like a birthday party at the park and just trying to be a person, right? And so the fact that they all die in the end is actually, oh, spoiler alert, is
And we can
actually,
assume everyone watched this movie. Why would you be listening to this if you didn't? We told you. We gave you 2 weeks.
they don't all die. They don't all die. Most of them. But anyway, that all the rats die, or these people. I think it's great storytelling that they do.
So what do you think about Mark Wahlberg then? Coming in at the end to clean up everything.
It's great, right? Because he's a sleazy cop guy. Each one of these sides has the sleazy guys that work. Mr. French, and I think opposite of Mr. French is Mark Wahlberg's character. Like these guys that are. That's exactly what I'm talking about with the morally gray, right? Mark Wahlberg decides to go and murder someone in their house, and he's a cop. Like, so there's that morally gray. You're not really sure where people are standing in this movie. And I mean, who knows if he gets away with it? Who knows what happens? I also like that too.
Right. I like to imagine Wahlberg gets away with it. I think he deserved the justice because he lost his boss. It was clear he liked his boss a lot. And you brought up a fantastic comparison. We do have 2 sides to the same coin. We have Billy, we have Martin Sheen, and we have Mark Wahlberg. Martin Sheen is opposite Frank. Wahlberg is opposite Mr. French. And that's fantastic. So what did you think about, I guess, a final little topic here, Martin Sheen? I think of all of the characters, Queelan is the only one who's probably as innocent as one can be in this situation. He sends Billy in. He knows this is dangerous, but he's a father figure. We go into his home and his son goes to state. His wife left some food on the stove. It's a family home. You feel like this guy is the father that Billy never had.
Absolutely. And it's sad, right? It's sad when he dies in the movie. It's sad because he's trying to protect him. He's up on top of the roof and he lights a cigarette and tells him to just run around the. He's trying to play it off and it doesn't work out in his favor. Also, there's a huge shock value moment right after that, which I think, you're not really sure if that's coming or not. It just comes out of nowhere. I think he is definitely, like you said, the opposite of Frank, the opposite of the idea of Frank, and it just plays out really well. What do you think? Do you think that it's well done? Do you think that we needed to have some reality in this story because of all of these caricatures of people that are playing crime bosses and cops and all this stuff? And how do you feel about Martin Scorsese's relationship with Mark Wahlberg and how that plays into each other? Because Mark Wahlberg is irreverent, just that caricature of this, cop guy that's just going to give shit to whoever. And then Martin Scorsese, or not Martin Scorsese, the director of the film also does a great job. But just that relationship that's happening, like in the first Office scene.
Yeah, I like what you said. It's real, right? They're real people, and we've all known bosses like that. We've all known the very sane, great boss you want to talk to, and then there's the other boss that you never want to talk to. But that doesn't mean they're a bad boss. I had coaches like that in high school on my crew team. The one coach you really like, really, really kind person, and then, if you'll pardon my language, the hard ass who was unrelenting. If you didn't do it right, you were going to get called out and you were going to get punished for it. But looking back, that was an incredible coach. One of the best coaches I've ever had in my life, because it was a nice juxtaposition, because it really does kind of like push you into that uncomfortable zone where you grow as a sports person, as a cop kind of a thing. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I also think that one last topic before we move on that I wanted to talk about was, what is organized crime, right? I mean, the definition of this in this film is that they are organized and they have the meeting about the microprocessors, right? And Frank says to the Chinese gang that they're buying the microprocessors from, we don't bring semi-automatic weapons to a meeting. We don't do that because we're civilized. So go ahead and put your guns down. Like, that is A, funny. B, it's like, yeah, they're running a business here. And yes, it's illegal, and yes, all of this stuff, but they're running a business.
Yeah, and you either play by the rules or you get out, kind of a thing. And
Yeah.
and it's a great scene too, because then you get to see Frank really stressing his power over the deal. He knows he's got the microprocessors and that the rival gang wants that more than he wants to pay. He wants the money. He doesn't need the money.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's great.
All right, Jeff. So which side would you do it for? Would you be a bad guy infiltrating good guys, or would you be a good guy infiltrating bad guys?
I don't know. That penthouse with the overlooking of the City Center sounds pretty good. I mean, if I had to choose, I'd probably pick that awesome penthouse. And here's the other thing. If you're the bad guy that's playing the good guy, you always have an out, because you can go to someone and say, I need witness protection. I need to get out of here. I need to go now. If you're the good guy that's playing the bad guy, like in this movie, when that happens, the only two people that know his identity are gone. So he's stuck.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, and I mean, too, if you're going with the good guys, as we've seen in films, usually good guys are a bit more lenient with punishment if they find out, right? They want to strike deals. They don't
That's right.
necessarily want to
got time.
cut your hand off.
Exactly.
All right. So first, I guess I'll ask this last one first. What gangster personality would you have? Be the dumb one, the strong one, the funny one?
What would I want to have, or what do I think I am?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's do which one would you want?
I want to be the crazy guy. Like, I want to be Frank. I want to be that gnawing, teething rat. Like, I want to be that crazy guy that people are just scared of because they're not really sure what you're gonna do.
Ooh, nice. And then what would your theme song be? You know, you're loading up in your car, you're ready to go do your gang thing. What's the song that plays?
I think it's always great in mob movies when they pull some some classical music or something, you know, like there's a big slow motion, you know, gunfight going on, and Nessun Dorma is playing in the background. It's like Nessun Dorma. Everybody's shooting each other. So I would pick something from like Otello or something.
Fantastic. Get some Pagliacci in the background.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh,
what about you,
fantastic.
Kristen? Which guy would you be?
All right. Me, I'd want to be the funny one that nobody really takes seriously, but they always want to joke from. But really, I'm some brains. You can't get rid of me because I'm so smart, because I've heard all the secrets.
Next time I tell you to put a body in the mosh, put a body in the mosh.
Exactly. And then the theme song. So regardless of who I am, I'd want it to be some kick butt hardcore 70s rock, maybe early 80s, Bad Outta Hell kind of.
AC/DC.
Yeah. Just it would blow your eardrums out. It's so good.
I love it.
Awesome. So if you like The Departed, we've got some great suggestions, other movies, other things for you. The Game is one that I really, really enjoy. It's I went with a cat and mouse theme here. So The Game, I'm not going to say any more than that because it's wild. And then Agatha Christie, anything by Agatha Christie, 10 Little Indians, a classic film, classic book. Again, you don't know who's the good guy, who's the bad guy.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I wrote down some other crime films here. So you got The Godfather, Goodfellas, American Gangster. But if you got a hankering for some Martin Scorsese, Gangs of New York, obvi.
Yes.
Casino is another obvi one. But my ultimate Martin Scorsese. This is a close second, The Departed. But I think Wolf of Wall Street is just really great.
It
But
was
you
a
have to be
coke-fueled roller coaster of a movie.
it starts with cocaine, I believe, in a very precarious situation. But you have to watch it, but also be ready to be offended.
It's an R-rated movie. I mean, he
Yes.
really took that R rating and he made it his own, and you can't dislike him for that.
Absolutely.
All right, Jeff, will this movie stand the test of time?
I'm gonna say yes, and I think it fits into all of those categories. And this might be a little sacrilegious to some people to compare it to The Godfather, because that's a lot of people's ultimate film, like what they rate a movie on a scale of 1 to The Godfather. How good was that movie? So I think it has the same aspects that make that film great: suspense, drama, violence, great camera work, a bit of romance. I mean, it's got a really great story that is just intense, and it's one of the best gangster films of all time, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with that ending. It was unexpected, but it didn't feel wrong, if that makes sense. It wasn't how I thought
Absolutely.
it was going to go, but I didn't think it was wrong how it went that way.
Yeah, and I recently found out that the film The Departed was actually based on a film that was produced in Hong Kong called Internal Affairs. It was released in 2004, and The Departed is basically the same story, but with an added about, hour and a half, I believe, of film and story and dialogue and all this stuff. So another thing that you could watch, and I actually want to watch, is Internal Affairs. Maybe I can try to find a subtitled version of it, and we can link it in the show notes.
Yeah, totally. I can definitely do that, or at least give the IMDb link. So if you're looking for it, you'll know you
Absolutely.
get the right one. Totally. All right. And with that, what's next, Jeff?
Next, we're going to be watching Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. You can find this on Hulu, iTunes, Stars, or Prime Video. A lot of different ways that you can watch this. Most likely, you got the collector's edition sitting on your shelf, getting ready to be put back into your old rusty DVD player.
They're all rusty.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to watch? This is a good question to ask. Do you want to watch the extended version, or do you want to watch just the normal
Is
theatrical version?
there any version beside the extended edition, Jeff? I ask you this.
Mic drop.
I'm gonna watch I love the extended, but I will say this is my favorite and I think the best of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Absolutely. And I'll talk about why I think that is, and I would love to hear your thoughts in a couple of weeks when we watch it again.
Heck yes. So this is a long one, folks. You're gonna need 2 weeks to watch it, especially if you do extended edition, because that's what, 3.5, 4 hours of high fantasy beauty is what it is. Beautiful. All right, and if you'd like to share your thoughts on Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, maybe even be featured in the mailbag, send your thoughts about the upcoming film, email talkingpicturesalliance@gmail.com, or tweet @TPAcast. Jeff, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter @Mr. Jeff Reynolds, all one word, where we're just tweeting about stuff that comes up.
Heck yeah, and mostly about Battle for Azeroth, right?
That's right. Yeah, for the Alliance.
I have to say for the Horde now. We gotta do the 2 sides to 1 coin. That's what the Departed's taught us. As for me, you can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram @_Kristen Ashton_. And as for this show, you can find us right here, twitch.tv/Dream Destroyer, every other Sunday. We will be back August 12th with Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. And if you'd like to support this podcast, head on over to patreon.com/TPAcast. All right, Jeff, final words?
You're a cop.
fantastic. How long does it take you to practice those lines? That was